All right, so what we're going to do this time is talk about this concept of economies of scale. We'll get through the definition of it, description, we'll talk about some of the benefits it offers, and look at some examples very specific to the media industry. So let's get started. First thing, of course, we've got to touch upon is what the heck this thing means. All right, so economies of scale, as the book points out, is an economic principle that suggests that as a company gets larger, their ability to produce whatever it is they produce goes down in cost. So to put it more succinctly, as a business becomes larger, the cost of production per unit becomes smaller. What are media companies producing? Well, they're producing content, but one of the other ways of looking at it is saying they're producing audiences for advertisers. So that's another way to look at it. That'll come up later on. So how do we apply this to the media industry? Let's take a look at broadcasting in particular. I think a really good example is the idea of a station group. Now, you did some research earlier in this semester looking at WESH TV. You looked up what its parent company was, and its parent company was Hearst Corporation. Well, that company is a station group. As you know, because you did the research, they own about 34 stations around the United States. So they are in a position to take advantage of economies of scale. Let's talk about how. These are some ways in which station groups can take advantage of their position. They have these stations all around the country that do the same thing in the same way. So when those stations might be considering the concept of syndicated programming, what they can do is buy the same syndicated programming for multiple stations at the same time. So what is a syndicated program? You may not know about that too much right now. It'll be coming up in another chapter or two, but you do know what those programs are like. One example would be Friends. As you're aware, it's almost ubiquitous. It's on cable, it's on broadcast stations, it's on Hulu, it's on other streaming services. So Friends is very popular. It's a program that ended in the 1990s, but it still makes money because it's being sold to stations and other outlets every year through syndication. Now, when a group like Hearst says, we're going to put Friends on the air and 15 of our stations at 7 o'clock at night, then they're in a better position to tell the folks who syndicate Friends that perhaps they should lower their overall price because they're buying it essentially in bulk. They're buying it from multiple stations at the same time. Let's think about this idea of vendors. There are a bunch of other kinds of vendors that broadcast stations are involved with. Some of them could be for audience data. That would be the Nielsen company. Others might be engineering companies or equipment companies, like, say, Panasonic. If we focus on Panasonic for a moment, I think that works as a good example. Panasonic, let's say, makes television cameras for $20,000 each. Okay? Expensive cameras. If Hearst says, I want to go to you, Panasonic, and I'm going to buy 15 of those cameras for one for each of 15 stations, then they're in a better position to get a decrease on that $20,000. Maybe get it down to 12. That savings is very, very helpful, of course, in lowering the production cost, the cost of the per unit value of what it is they're producing, their general operation. Another example here is the idea of new talent, which is slightly different, but I think it's related and I think you'll understand in a moment. Let's say Hearst has stations in 3 different markets, 100th market, 50th market, and let's say the 18th market, which is Orlando. If they have a news anchor who is really, really good, and they're in that 100th market, they're going to want to bring that person up perhaps to the 50th market and get them settled there because they can generate more money in the 50th market than in the 100th market. And it costs a lot of money to hire and search for new talent. So if you can keep them in, what you're doing is maximizing the ability to make money with them over time. And of course, if you have more stations, you're in touch with better talent and more of it. So the costs of working with talent and moving them forward, advancing them, goes down. So that's the idea of economies of scale. And of course, a couple of these other examples of station groups have been known before. We've got Hearst Television, that one you're familiar with, Raycom perhaps. SBG is Sinclair Broadcast Group. Cox Media is one, and they've got a pretty good footprint in the Orlando market. What I want to do is give you a quick sense as we wrap up of some differences among these station groups. I'm going to give you a listing of the top 10 stations based on their spot revenue. What does that mean exactly? Well, we're seeing Sinclair, CBS, Fox, NBC. Sinclair is number one in the amount of money they're raising through their commercials. That's what spot revenue is. You can see in this next column, 233 stations in 108 markets. CBS, Fox, Universal, NBC Universal, 30, 29, 28, almost the same, 18, 17, 20 different markets. So you're getting a sense that there is a little bit of a difference in the way these station groups operate. One of the big things that's different is that the CBS one, Fox and NBC, have fewer stations, but they generate almost as much revenue as that Sinclair does. Two different models of station groups. These are unique. We call them O&Os. You probably have seen that term already. They're owned and operated by a broadcast network. And all of those stations are in the largest markets in the United States. So you can have fewer stations in the largest markets and generate as much money as this other model by Sinclair, owning a lot of stations in the smallest markets. That's one of the reasons why the O&Os are looked at as being particularly powerful and valuable. So station groups are a really good example of how economies of scale can be applied in the media industry. I hope that makes sense to you.